Good morning, brothers and sisters. It's a pleasure to be back again. It's been a while. I trust that all of you are doing well. And as we are kept in the grace of God, as we walk in His Word, we have been subjected to a lot of things in these past few years. This topic that was brought up, I would say that it's a very apt, as well as the fact that the world has been in turmoil for a long time. It's just different turmoil. A few years ago, we were in a lockdown. And so the COVID turmoil has caused us all kinds of grievances. And within every turmoil, there are opportunities. Now, during which time I had the great pleasure of going online, and hence I was able to get into a new way of teaching the Bible. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened. So good things can come out of situations. But the world has been in turmoil for a long time, different turmoils. However, as we exited the COVID turmoil, a lot more things have since happened. And as we look at some of these things, we are seeing a whole lot more that will pan out in the coming months, if not just within the next 12 to 24 months. And so we'll deal with some of these things. But for most of us, we would just be observing it. We would just be a bystander. We would just be victims of events. There is nothing much that you and I can do after you watch all your YouTubes, read all the news, and be fearful of all the things that everybody says. There's nothing that you and I can actually do, really. What we can really do right now is maybe go for your elections in the coming weeks. But there are things that we ought to be able to do, obviously, after we learn all these information. Now, some of this information may be new to you, or you may not see it in this light that I'm sharing. But I want to split our talk this morning into two parts. One is to discuss the turmoil that's happening in the world. And number two, I would like to really ask the question, what should we do? Now, one thing for sure that we don't need to discuss is God is in control, right? This is God's world. Nothing goes out of His boundaries. And so discussing that is a moot point. But what is more important is that we are still here. And what are we supposed to do? So I'd like to take us on a trajectory after looking at the world in turmoil as to what you and I can actually do today. What does God say about these things? You would see many things around us. Natural disasters are not going away. It's just going to go worse, right? Earthquakes are going to be there. One of the things that you may not be aware is that China is very afraid of earthquakes. And the reason is that earthquake can actually destroy China. If we are not aware, we have since discovered in the last 10, 20 years that there is more water underground than there is above ground. And right under China is a body of water that is the size of the Arctic Ocean. And so the Chinese is very afraid of seismic activities. Now, everybody is afraid of earthquakes, but different people are afraid of earthquakes for different reasons. Because natural disasters bring about hardship. Now, serving in Barnabas 8 helps me see a lot. And in fact, I would say too much. It's like a perpetual suffering world. And it's not pleasant. And I would not invite you to stand on my side to see the world, because it really is bad. Everywhere we look is trouble. Every continent is trouble except for the Antarctica. But rest assured, there will always be drought. There will always be hunger. There will always be shortage of food. But we'll talk about that shortly. One of the problems that we see is Africa. And Asians don't quite like Africa very much for some reason, because it seems to be like a little black hole. Every year we would help, and it would be a famine of some sort. Too much sun, too much water, too much locusts, and too much of war. And so there seems to be a never-ending reason for suffering, shortage of food, hunger. Political and economic instability, so what's new? We've been in this for a long time. We can't see when are we coming out of it. But the difference now after the COVID is everyone is facing a time of flux. No one can actually say they are stable. No one. No one in the developed world. And if they are not stable, then neither will we be stable. So political instability is a big question. Because a lot of doomsday sayers will tell you, well, the US dollar is going to crash. It's been saying that for the last, umpteen years. And there is a reason. Please do not write them off, because there is a reason. US has been doing quantity easing, big word, to help their economy by sheer printing of money without any backing. And that's a worldwide, well-known situation. But it has come a point in time where it doesn't matter anymore. Why? Because the world is very dependent on it. And so people who say that the world is going to crash because the US dollar is going to crash, will have to wait for a while to come. Because it's no longer about printing, it's about stability of how people use it. And of course, the financial system has been melting in recent days. If you have not heard, banks are closing in US. For all things that we never expect, the US is unstable. And if one bank topples, you know that it's a domino effect. Not in US, but around the world. Now, many of us may not be aware, but it is a real issue. And so many people are also pushing, especially the young people, are looking at cryptocurrencies, right? A move away from fiat into some digital mechanism. And that goes up and that comes down. So what is stable? Nothing. Healthcare system has broken down during COVID. Now why did I list it out there? Is because in Africa, they are facing problems like cholera. Things that you and I never thought will ever exist again is happening. Tuberculosis is making a comeback. So many of these things are popping out, both natural and I would suggest unnatural phenomena, where you would say that it escaped from the lab, somebody let it go, whatever that may be, there will be another pandemic. Armed conflicts. Right after COVID, we had the Russia-Ukraine situation. Now, many of us think that it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal. Because it is a culmination of many things that has happened many years before. Wars don't happen because somebody woke up and said, I think I'm going to take that country. It doesn't work that way. It has been a lot of tension for many, many years. And while this is happening, many more tensions are occurring. And let me suggest this to you. Why the world is in turmoil is because one particular superpower, which will not be named, has decided that they are the only superpower in the world. And in order to maintain that position, that unnamed superpower has decided that all other potential superpower should not exist or should not become a superpower. And hence the actions that they have done ripples across the globe. Now in time to come, our country and countries around us will be forced to choose which superpower are we going to be aligned with. It is for real. It is for real. And that will come with consequences on both sides. It is going to put us into a whirlwind spin. I put to you that armed conflicts are, I would say, specifically designed by superpowers. It is not because somebody decided to irritate a superpower. It's because the superpowers are irritating each other, trying to lead each other into some form of a war, and thereby giving excuse for greater conflict. Conflicts are no good for any of us, but at any point in time, if you're not aware, the Ukraine-Russia situation is not the only conflict in the world. There are at least 40 to 50 armed conflicts that's happening, which you and I don't know. Why? Because it's not interesting. It doesn't feature some of the bigger names on the platform, but they do affect us. Religious intolerance is on the rise. Burkina Faso, you find the militants are going around, and they are not going to take a break, and it's going to be rampant. Places where you don't think religious intolerance exists are showing their heads. Government changes are due to religious persecution or some form of religious implication. But I like to highlight the last point, which is food insecurity. It is going to hit us sooner than you think, because we don't produce most of the food that we eat today. And that is why we have inflation, because things have to be imported. And with a weak ringgit, things are going to be tough. So, is the world in turmoil? Of course. It has been for a while. But you know what has happened to us is, it's happened to us for too long that we don't feel that it's a problem. Because it's slowly inching, it's like boiling the frog kind of mentality. But the magnitude is hitting a global scale. The war in Ukraine is not just the war in Ukraine. So let me just suggest to you how it affects us. Political uncertainty is here in Malaysia and will remain for a while until some clarity is seen. Unity government means very little right now. But beyond us would be the world at large, that we will be affected by the mega forces that is out there. Religious harmony will be an issue. And the issue of religious harmony will be stirred very much by the LGBT issue. The LGBT issue is going to split families, split churches, split religious organizations, and split countries. It is a Pandora's box that was opened, and now you can't close it anymore. So just be aware that all these things are going to be there. So you see, in the past, religious doctrine seems to fuel religious disharmony, because people would take one side of a doctrine and then another would take another side of doctrine. Let me suggest to you that that's a thing of the past. The turmoil that's going to spin the rest of the world are splitting denominations, are splitting churches, and splitting countries into two. So which side are you going to take? Some people will lean on one or the other, but you can't if you're neither here nor there. So who is going to back you up? Now I'm going to suggest that the mega world power will force the issue. It's not up to you and me to say, oh, I will stay neutral. We will always remain a Switzerland. It never will happen. you have to take a side. The weak ringgit, anybody's guess. But it will be managed in some way. Inflation is real. Whatever you were told about inflation is not true. You and I know, by the time we finish this service, you go next door, 2 years ago or 3 years ago before COVID, and now that's been a substantial increase. I suggest anything between 20 and 30% without doing anything. Without you leaving your house, things have gone up. But food security is going to be our issue. I've come back to this. Because of the Ukraine war, wheat is going to be an issue. Russia is stopping all shipments through the Caspian Sea. India has decided not to sell wheat. China had a wheat harvest problem. Now, wheat is a major thing. So tomorrow, your wheat products are going to go up. And that's a worldwide phenomenon. And what is wheat? Wheat is a very important word in the Bible. Wheat is what that part of the world in the Bible lives on. Now, in our part of the world, we use rice, but we still use a lot of wheat. Wheat is for food. God gave wheat for food, and the whole world is dependent on it for food. Who controls wheat will control the food prices. So when you have food insecurity, what is going to happen is the rich will get it and the poor will die suffering hunger. Where do we stand? We would not be the ones in the head of the line to receive anything. And that is going to be a turmoil. Now, I'm not here to paint a bleak picture. The picture is bleak. I'm just telling you as it is. No, there's no other way of saying, don't worry, be happy, it's great. It's not. Now, is life going to be bad? It depends on how you make out of it. If you follow the flow of the stream, then you will suffer with the flow of the stream. If you become a salmon to try to swim upstream, well, one day you will get to lay your eggs. The question is, how are we to live? When you look at all this, what can we glean from Scripture? And so I like to take you through one more point before we leave, which is going to bug all of us in the near future, if not now, is artificial intelligence. I studied artificial intelligence back in the 80s when it was still relatively new. One of my major, actually. I only see artificial intelligence 60 years. Is it 60? 50 years. 80, 40 years. Well, 40 years after I graduated. But I understand artificial intelligence, so I'm just going to say a few words and then we'll move on from here. If you're not aware of artificial intelligence, you should. And those who are very aware of artificial intelligence are you students, because you use it to do your assignments, to hand in a perfect score. And teachers are now scrambling, trying to figure out how do you set exams and do assignments, because everybody uses ChatGPT or whatever else, produce a perfect assignment when in their regular course they couldn't even write a sentence properly. And that's a real situation. People are using this as a crutch. People are stopping to think. But let me just share with you, these things are here. The Pandora's box is open. Chatbots are there. Face changes are real. It used to be for the rich and famous, very expensive, but now you can access them and then put somebody's face into somebody's video. And you would think that, oh, this person is that person. And so eventually, you know what's going to happen? AI is going to confuse us about truth. That's the danger I want to point out to you about truth. You think the internet has spread a lot of fake news? Wait till you see fake videos. And it's going to be a commonplace in the future. And it could be used for good, and it could be used for evil. It's a double-edged sword. And when somebody gets caught in an uncompromising situation, you'd be wondering, is that real or is it fake? Because your child at home can actually do it. But more importantly is this: AI warfare is going to be a threat in the near future. Go read up. That's just only so much I can say. But warfare is where AI is going to be big. Trying to train swarms of drones, and they attack with precision. Now, all of this will be a thing that you used to watch on TV, but it's coming in the next 12 to 24 months. At this point in time, every bad news that I'm telling you is not going to be like the next decade or two. It is going to be within our lifetime. Yes, it is burdensome. It creates a conflicting feeling in us. It's like doomsday. What can we do? Can you say no to any of these? No. It's going to be there. So how should we then live is what I want to spend a little bit of time on. Why? Because after this lecture, you will go back, you will read your newspaper, you read your internet, you watch your Facebook, whatever. It will have all kinds of things that I have talked about. And it's going to build. If you haven't received it, you will be receiving more and more over your YouTube, over your TikTok or whatever, Instagram. Because it's real. And eventually, you won't know what is real. All right? So that is going to be a powerful threat to our lives. So how should we then live? We ought to learn the truth. We ought to be masters of what is a fact, so that we can tell what is not a fact. Now, fake news have forced all of us to be very careful before you forward something. Make sure that it's true. But people are still trigger happy, right? We just send whatever we do. And you know what we do? We couch it. Send as is. I've never checked it, so it's on you. It doesn't work. What will happen if I were to say the same here? Please check for yourself. I've not checked any of these things, and be aware. Ain't gonna work. We all ought to be responsible people, because what we say, what we do, is going to be judged by God. So how should we then live? I want to draw your attention back to the book of Ecclesiastes. I'm not sure whether you have a chance to study Ecclesiastes. We're not going to study the chapter. I'm just going to draw your attention, because I believe there is a message in there that helps us frame our lives in better perspective than just reading all kinds of news of the world in turmoil. Because the more you read about the world, the more miserable you will become. And you'll be wondering, what happened? Well, let me tell you, in those days of Ecclesiastes and even after, there were turmoil situations in Israel. Now, we may not be aware, if you don't read the Old Testament, then you won't have a chance to appreciate it. One of the worst situations was in the time of Hezekiah, southern kingdom of Judah, a king of Judah, Hezekiah. In his 14th year, after he saw the northern kingdom being taken over by Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, he faces a new threat. King Sennacherib from Assyria. And this threat is worse than all other threats, because he will be hearing all kinds of news as it rumbles through. This Assyrian army was an incredible force, and everywhere he went, he conquered and took and destroyed. Why? Because he had 185,000 soldiers. Now, you can't imagine 185,000. Well, think of it this way. It's just a swarm of locusts. And you can't kill the locust because there will be another locust that comes. So you just have to sit there and let it overpower you. That's that kingdom. They came down from the north, took the cities of Judea. Remember? Northern kingdom, Israel. Southern kingdom is Judah. Northern kingdom is gone. Shalmaneser came, took them, removed them, brought other people in, called the Samaritans. Now, they came down further south and says, we want to take Judah. Sennacherib came, 185,000, ate up practically everything they saw in sight, and surrounded Jerusalem. In that city was King Hezekiah. And little known to many of us, Isaiah was standing in the midst, next to the king, looking at 185,000 soldiers. Basically, what's going on in their mind is, it's the end, right? Let's sing the song, no? All Land Sign. That's it. It's game over for Israel. It's game over for Judah. But is it? Because it's in God's plan. It is not time. Because Shalmaneser, when he took the northern kingdom, wanted to take the southern, and God said no. And so they were defeated by the southern kingdom. But now it's a different story. 185,000 didn't matter what you do, isn't it? And so here lies turmoil. This news is not new in Israel. You read through, there will always be Amalekite, Philistines, all the way. Everybody is fighting each other, and there's turmoil. There's a period of peace, turmoil. So what happened to Hezekiah? Because God says otherwise, God protected Hezekiah. So if you remember, you go back and you read. Now we are covering Isaiah chapter 36, 37, 38, and 39. The 4 chapters there is spoken from Isaiah's view, because Kings and Chronicles have a slightly different presentation. So Isaiah was documenting what happened. 185,000, and they were destroyed overnight. By who? By the angel of God. So God being in control is a moot point. That's what I'm saying. If God wants it to happen, it will happen. Because God wanted the Assyrians to come and take the northern kingdom. But God wasn't ready to allow the southern kingdom to be taken. So 185,000 were destroyed literally overnight by one angel. The book of Ecclesiastes is to teach man how to live, whether you're in times of peace or in times of turmoil. Because living before God never changes. Our information changes, but how we live before God has never changed. Ecclesiastes, we begin from chapter 11. It says, "Rejoice, O young man, in your childhood." So it talks to many of you here who are young. "Let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and the sight of your eyes." Yes, live out your life. People say, young man, young woman, it's lots to live. But know that for all these, God will bring you into judgment. Yeah, you can do whatever you want, but remember, whatever you want doesn't mean literally whatever you want. Because it has to be guarded by the fact that we live before God. And so, you will do the things of your heart and the sight of your eyes as long as you understand that you would not stand to be punished. And so what does that mean? It means that you need to know what God wants you to do. So that as you live out your life, it has to be within the confines of God's laws. "Therefore remove sorrow from your heart and put away evil from your flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity." Now understand this. Put away evil from your flesh. Very easy to understand. Don't do anything that your flesh desires you to do that hurts others and offends God. That's it. Evil does not necessarily mean moral. Please do not misunderstand. In the Hebrew, evil literally means what is wrong in the eyes of the person who's looking at it. Somebody comes to rob you, it's good in his eyes, but it's bad in yours, right? So it's evil in your eyes. But you may think that it is okay that you do, but it's wrong in God's eyes. So what is important is not what you think. What is important is what God thinks. And if God looks at it and says that's evil, that's evil. There's no two way about it. And so from childhood and youth are vanity. Now vanity is not useless. We'll come back to this. It's just brief. And those of you who have been younger and then grew older realize that, wow, my young days just went like that. That's basically what it's trying to say. Then we go into chapter 12. It says, remember now your Creator in the days of your youth. Remember means bring to mind all the time. We are in a world of turmoil. Don't let that eat you up. Before the evil days, in fact, the word difficult means evil days come. Now, evil days means what? The years draw near when you say, I have no pleasure in them. What does that mean? Now, understand when we get into Ecclesiastes chapter 12, there's a lot of imagery words. It merely tells you the difficult days or the evil days are days when you grow older and you don't like that. The aches, the pains, the tears, all the things that you don't want in life that you don't have in your young days, it will come. That's what it means by evil. It's evil in your eyes. Why? Because that's not what you want. I want to be young all the time so I can do anything I want. But it's not true. Because there will be evil days that will come. The years that draw near, the years will arrive. You can't stop that. When you say, I have no pleasure in them, I don't want these years. So it's a reminder, all of us will face it. Some of us will take some time. Some of us are already there. Right? Then you would understand. From verse 2 to verse 5, the Jews may have different ways of looking at it, but they do not disagree that this is a picture, an imagery that's driven to show us that this is a vision of old age. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened. It refers to the face, the sparkle of your eyes, your cheeks being your moon, your stars being your eyeballs. Meaning, well, there will come a point in time where these things are going. The wrinkles are coming out, you can't see well. The clouds do return after the rain. After you cry, your eyes are still blurred. In the days when the keepers of the house tremble, who are keepers of your house? Your hands and your feet. And they will tremble because tremble is normal when you grow old, right? And the strong men bow down, your legs will give way. And the grinders cease because they are few. Your teeth are falling out and you got more false than real. And those that look or the gazes through the window grows dim. You look out as your eyes can't see well. Your cataract is coming in. When the doors are shut in the streets, your doors are your lips. Why are your lips shut? There's not much teeth to hold it up. When the sound of grinding is low, nothing much to chew with. When one rises up at the sound of a bird, just a little chirp, everyone is awake. Well, when you're younger, you will sleep all the way through to noontime. But at the drop of a pin, when you're old, you are awake. The daughters of music are brought low. You can't hear. And they are afraid of heights. Of course, when you're older, you don't climb chairs. They are afraid of the terrors of the road. I'm not sure if they walk out, whether they can get on the journey. My uncle is here, and we have to plan trips very carefully. Can he walk in to that restaurant? Is it near the door? All these things are being planned. When the almond tree blossoms, and almond tree blossoms, it means that your hair is white. Because the almond tree's hair is white. The grasshopper is a burden. So a grasshopper sits on your back. You are facing a burden that you're carrying. And desire fails. You've got nothing much that you want to eat. Musang King, I can't smell. I can't see. And then a man goes to his eternal home, into the grave. And the mourners go about the street. So it's a picture. While you can still remember God, do that. Before the silver cord is loosed, the silver cord is your spinal cord when it breaks. Your golden bowl shatters, right? Your skull is broken. The pitcher shattered at the fountain. Your stomach can't eat anymore and it's broken. The wheel broken at the well. Your eyes can't see and it's closed. Thus, the dust returns to the ground as it was. Genesis chapter 2 verse 7, and God formed Adam out of the dust of the ground. We are all made of dust. Genesis chapter 3. And until you finish working hard, you will return to the ground. It's actually saying the same thing. And the spirit returns to God who gave it. The neshama, the breath that God gave to man, God will take it back because that is for God. And then we come back to the prime theme of the book of Ecclesiastes. It says, vanity of vanity, says the preacher, all is vanity. And traditionally, we have misunderstood this. Because people keep saying this, if vanity is useless, it's futile, and it's not. The word here is hevel, and it means brief, short, like breath. You know when you eat garlic, and then you get garlicky smell, right? And then you could smell it immediately after you eat it, but after a while, the smell dissipates. That's hevel, brief. It's like a vapor. You know, you sang the song today. Man is like vapor. It's there, but it's not for long. So, brevity of brevity, says the Kohelet. All is brief. Life on earth is brief. So we are looking at the turmoil. Oh, what are we going to do? Well, it's going to be for another couple of years, but times will be tough. Although it's brief, length of time is dependent whether you're in suffering or you're not. When you are suffering, a minute is like a year. When you are having fun, a minute is way too short. But life is short under the sun for all of us. Because those of us who are older now, you reminisce back, it's like, oh, my youth just disappeared before I realized it. Those of you who are young, appreciate these statements from those who are older, because life has to be lived, and make good use of your life before God. And so we come to an end. The sum of the matter, after we discuss the turmoil of the world, well, the sum of the matter is after the Kohelet, the preacher, has discussed 12 chapters, when all has been heard and considered, after you hear what I say about this world going upside down, topsy-turvy, all the problems happening, you know what? It's not about learning more of it and becoming the next president of the United States. It's not meant for you or I. But what can we do? After all that is said and done, it's only two things. Fear God and keep His commandments. This is man's whole duty. When God made man, God wanted man to fear God and keep His commandments. Now let me just briefly dwell on this to explain the Hebrew, right? Since I'm on this. Fear God. It is not reverential fear. Okay? I'm saying it again. It is not reverential fear. Please do not water down the word. It really means be afraid of God. Be terrified of God. But in what context? Now let me just share with you a story. My dad is a very conservative Chinese man. When I was, I guess, around 5, I was attending a kindergarten that was not too far away from my house, crossed a few main roads, and it's just next door. And my grandmother would pick me up every day. And one day, my grandmother didn't show up when the bell rang. So I started to panic at age 5, and I decided to walk home at age 5. Crossed a few main roads, and I made it home. And I was very happy because at age 5, I could actually cross all the roads and go home safe. And so I felt like an adult. And of course, when my dad came back, he didn't feel the same way. Out came the rotan, and that was the daylights leaving me. Guess what? The next time my grandmother came late, I wouldn't move. Not for your dear life. Why? Because the imagery of that rotan is not what I'm looking for. That was the fear my dad. Why? Because there are some decisions that I have to be extremely careful to make. Otherwise, my dad won't be happy. So fear God has always been associated, for he is a consuming fire. When the sons of Aaron, Nadav and Abihu, provided strange fire in the tabernacle, there was no chance for them to say, I'm sorry. Why? Because God's house, God's rules, I told you not to do, and you do it, zip, finish. The fire of God came down and consumed them. And so we get this phrase, fear God, for he is a consuming fire. Is that reverential fear? No, it's absolute fear. If you're not afraid of God destroying you, then you have no respect for God. So if I didn't care whether my dad beat the daylights out of me, then I couldn't be bothered with what my dad says, right? And so that is fear. It is a good thing. It is an oriental thing. Because the father of the house says it all, right? His word is law. There's no otherwise. There's no need to ask why. And so if you don't obey, bang, the rotan comes out. And so there is discipline by the father, not because the father loves to see you in pain, but the father inflicts that for discipline so that you don't do it again. And so we are constantly reminded to fear God, for He's a consuming fire. That's what it means. So whenever you and I do anything, live your life, but watch it, because God will judge. So you think, is it safe to do this? Will God be okay for me to do this? And those are the questions that will pop up in the mind by fear God. Keep His commandments is to protect it so that you teach it to the next party. Teach it to your children. Teach it to your friends. Because that's how you have learned to live. And so you teach it to others so that they could live the same. And that's all. So that every generation will continue to fear God. So I'm here to suggest that the turmoil in the world will happen whether we like it or not. The question is, they are around us and nothing we can do about it. But what can we do is fear God and keep His commandments. And there is no 100 things that you need to do, really. For this is man's whole duty. That's your duty and mine. If you don't know what God wants, then learn that. Better than watching YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. Because there's only so many hours in a day. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't spend time on anything else but just sit there and read the Bible. No, we have to live life. That's for sure, right? We have to eat, drink, and be merry. That's what Ecclesiastes said. That's life. God made life for us to enjoy, but to enjoy within the confines of His rules. And so we need to find out more of His rules if you're not aware. The world is going to go in turmoil sooner or later. If it calms down, a new one will pop up. For God will bring everything that we do into judgment. God will judge what we do. That's nothing new. Including everything that you don't think anyone can see. After you've done it, you hide it. whether good or evil. Now again, let me just end by saying this. Good and evil in Hebrew is not good and evil in the English. Good and evil is always seen in the eyes of the beholder. Remember the example I gave you? The robber who comes to rob you is good in his eyes. He's going to make some money. But it's evil in your eyes because you're going to lose some money. You see, good and evil is relative to how the person sees it. In this verse, it's about God judging. And so it should be viewed from God's eyes. Seen from His eyes. Now, how do you know God treats something as good and something as evil? His commandments. It's as simple as that. And so, what you and I think good and evil is irrelevant because it's not a defense when God judges. You can't say, why did you do that? My elder said so. No can do. You did it, your fault. You can't punish the elder. You follow what I'm saying? God is going to judge each of us. It's man's duty, your duty and mine. The world in turmoil is a fact. How it's going to go in turmoil may change. But what doesn't change is man's whole duty. How should we then live? We should live in fearing God so that everything we do is very carefully weighed. And keep His commandments to know what He wants us to do, what He doesn't want us to do. And God gives us what we call principles of living. How we deal with each other. If we offend another, what do we do? If we do things intentionally, what we do? If we did something unintentional, what do we do? It doesn't mean if you unintentionally hurt someone, you can go scot-free. God is just. It's fair. Justice is God's middle name. And so we will practice that. And then everything will be fine. No matter whether the ringgit is going to be at 4.0 or 5.0, no matter whether there's food that's scarce or not, we ought to take care of each other, isn't it? That's why we're in a community. Why does the Bible keep telling you, take care of the widow, take care of the fatherless, take care of the weak, take care of the poor? Why? See, when they went into the promised land, everybody had a piece of land, but not everybody is rich. Only some is rich. That's how society goes. There are some smart ones who knows how to make use of whatever they have, but many people are just making a living, and then there are those who are barely surviving. And so God says, I gave you the land, take care of those who can't take care of themselves. But in what way? In a way where you respect the dignity of life. You know, in our modern day, marwa, right? Face. Don't do it in a way where you make that person feel less than human. So, the law of gleaning came. When you harvest, leave some at the edge and let them do some work so that it is not a handout. So all of these are principles, and God says that's our duty. When it's in turmoil, you know what to do. When things happen, you and I must know what to do. If we don't, let us find out now. How are we to live? We're not to hog everything to ourselves. God says those who can is to help those who can't. So as we close this morning, I just want to say the world in turmoil is real. If you don't believe me, it will happen anyways. Right? It doesn't matter. But what is going to be more important is what are you going to do when things like this happen? Can you help others? Do you know what to do? Do you know how to counsel? Do you know how to help people feel better, be better, and know God better? Because the only thing that's unchanging is God and His Word. And that's it. Now, even then we will continually grow old. So remember your Creator in the days of your youth. And those of us who are already in the passages that we read, where the grinders are few, right? Your keepers of your body is shivering. These are all very, what I call imagery, very poetic language that's basically describing how some of us are already feeling. And some of us are getting there. But what doesn't change is our duty, whether young or old, turmoil or peaceful, it remains the same. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is man's whole duty. Let's pray.